Commander Lisa Harper rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the glowing screen again. She had been staring at the same data for 3 hours, but it still made no sense. The coffee in her cup had gone cold long ago, but she barely noticed. Something was very wrong with the galaxy maps, and she could not figure out what. The exploration ship Horizon's Edge floated quietly in deep space, far from any star or planet. Lisa and her crew were part of the Galactic Mapping Project, a big effort by many alien races to create the most complete map of the galaxy ever made. They had been working on this for 2 years now, collecting data from dozens of different alien civilizations. Lisa called over to the navigation station. "Danny, come look at this again. Tell me I'm not going crazy." Chief Navigator Danny Walsh pushed back from his console and walked over to Lisa's workstation. He was a tall man with graying hair who had been mapping star systems for 15 years. If anyone could make sense of confusing data, it was Danny. "What's got you so puzzled, Commander?" Danny asked as he leaned over her shoulder to look at the display. Lisa pointed at the 3-dimensional map floating in front of them. It showed thousands of star systems, trade routes, and territorial boundaries from across the galaxy. Different colors showed which alien race controlled or had explored each area. Blue for the Zentari Empire, red for the Calax Trading Guild, green for the Vorthic Republic, and so on. "Look at this section here," Lisa said, highlighting a roughly spherical area of space. "This is human territory, right? All our colonies, all our trade routes, everything we control or have explored." Danny nodded. "Yeah, that's us. About 1,200 star systems, give or take. Now look at all the alien maps, every single one of them." Lisa switched between different data sets. Each time, the same thing happened. The moment the map reached the edge of human space, it just stopped. Not faded out, not became less detailed. Just completely blank. Danny frowned and leaned closer. "That's weird. Let me check the Centauri charts. They're supposed to be the best map makers in the galaxy." He pulled up the Centauri data on a separate screen. The Centauri Empire had been exploring and mapping space for over 3,000 years. Their charts covered an area of space so huge that it would take a human ship traveling at maximum speed over 50 years just to cross from one end to the other. Their maps showed incredible detail, down to individual asteroids and small moons, around distant stars. But when Danny traced the Centauri charts to the border of human space, they simply ended. It was like someone had drawn a perfect sphere around all human territory and erased everything inside it from the Centauri records. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Danny muttered. He pulled up another set of charts, these ones from this Calax Trading Guild. The Calax were merchant traders who had mapped every profitable trade route in 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. If there was money to be made somewhere, the Calax knew about it. Same result. Perfect detail everywhere in the galaxy, except for human space. The Calax charts showed trade routes that went right up to the edge of human territory. Then nothing. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "Danny, pull up everything we have. Every alien race, every database, every map we've collected." For the next hour, they went through chart after chart. The warlike Thorian Empire, who mapped space for military conquest. The peaceful Melody Federation, who explored for scientific knowledge. The ancient Eldari, whose records went back over 10,000 years. Even the mysterious Shadows, who rarely shared any information with other races. Every single one of them had the same gap. Perfect, detailed maps of the entire galaxy, with a neat spherical hole cut out exactly where humans lived. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's expert on alien cultures and history, had been listening to their conversation from across the bridge. She was a small woman with dark hair who spoke 6 alien languages and had spent most of her adult life studying how different races developed and spread across space. "Commander," Elena said, walking over to join them, "I think I know what you're looking at, and it's much worse than a mapping error." Lisa turned to face her. "What do you mean, worse?" Elena pulled up a chair and activated her own workstation. "I've been studying the timestamps on all this data. These maps aren't recent. Some of them are thousands of years old. The Vorthic charts we're looking at were made 7,000 years ago. The Eldari records go back even further." "So?" Danny asked. "Old maps, so what?" "So humans have only been traveling between stars for about 200 years, Elena replied. "We've only had colonies outside our home system for 150 years. Most of our expansion happened in the last century." Lisa felt her stomach drop as she understood what Elena was saying. "You mean these maps had gaps for human space before humans ever left Earth?" "Exactly. Look at this." Elena highlighted a section of the ancient Eldari database. This chart is 12,000 years old. It shows detailed information about star systems that are now deep inside human territory. But see these notations. Here, they're written in old Eldari script. I can only read a little bit of it, but this section translates roughly to Forbidden Zone or Reserved Area. Danny stared at the screen. Reserved for what? That's what we need to find out, Elena sighed. She pulled up more records. "I've found similar markings in 8 different alien databases. Different languages, different time periods, but they all say essentially the same thing. This area of space was set aside, marked as off-limits, long before humans ever got here." Lisa stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, stars twinkled in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, in the direction of Earth, was humanity's home. But apparently, that home had been waiting for them for thousands of years. "There's something else," Elena continued. "I've been analyzing the exact boundaries of these restricted zones. They're not natural. They don't follow star patterns, or trade routes, or any kind of logical territorial division. They're geometric. Perfect spheres and cylinders, like someone drew them with mathematical precision." "Someone wanted to keep this space empty," Lisa said quietly. "But who? And why?" Danny pulled up the navigation charts for their current mission. "Commander, we're supposed to rendezvous with the diplomatic fleet in 6 days. They're heading to the first major peace conference between humans and the Galactic Council." "Maybe. We should report this to them?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Yes, but first I want to dig deeper. Elena, can you translate more of these old records? I want to know exactly what these alien races knew about human space, and when they knew it." "I'll need help," Elena replied. "This is going to require linguistic analysis software and some very old translation databases. It might take days." "We have days," Lisa said. "Danny, set course for the rendezvous point, but keep our speed slow. I want as much time as possible to figure this out before we reach the diplomatic fleet." As the horizon's edge changed course and began moving through space, Lisa remained at her station, staring at the mysterious gap in the galaxy maps. Somewhere in that empty space on the alien charts lay the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. She had a feeling that truth was going to change everything humans thought they knew about themselves and their neighbors among the stars. The silence around human space in every alien database was not an accident. It was a message written in the absence of information. And Lisa Harper was determined to decode what that message meant, no matter where it led. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the diplomatic ship New Frontier and watched the alien fleet growing larger on the main screen. After 3 days of travel, they were finally approaching the meeting point where humanity would attend its first major peace conference with the Galactic Council. The sight should have filled him with excitement, but instead Jake felt nervous. Something was wrong about this whole situation. and he could not put his finger on what it was. The invitation to the peace conference had surprised everyone back. On Earth, for over 50 years, the major alien powers had treated humans with cold politeness at best. They traded with human colonies when it was profitable, but they never showed much interest in talking to humans as equals. Most alien races seemed to think humans were just another young species that would either grow up slowly or destroy themselves trying. Then 3 months ago, everything changed. The Galactic Council, made up of the 12 most powerful alien civilizations, sent a formal invitation for humans to attend a full diplomatic summit. Not just a trade meeting or a border dispute discussion, but a real peace conference where humans would be treated as an equal partner. Jake had been chosen to command the human delegation ship because of his 20 years of experience dealing with alien traders and diplomats. He thought he understood how aliens behaved and what they wanted from humans. But the closer they got to the meeting point, the more confused he became. "Captain," called Dr. Amy Chun from her workstation, "I think you need to see this." Amy was the mission's chief language expert. She spoke 12 different alien languages and had spent the last 6 months preparing for every possible conversation that might happen at the peace conference. If anyone could figure out what the aliens really wanted, it was Amy. Jake walked over to her station. "What have you found?" Amy looked worried as she gestured to her screen. "I've been analyzing the communication patterns from the alien ships. The problem is, they're speaking perfect English. Not just simple words or phrases that they learned for trade. Complex sentences, idioms, even slang terms that most humans don't know." "Maybe they've been studying our broadcasts?" Jake suggested. "That's what I thought at first," Amy replied. "But look at this." She played a recording of a conversation between 2 Zentari ship captains. They were speaking in their own language, but Amy had translated it into English subtitles. "The tall one with the dark hair will be their military leader," one Zentari said. "He has the bearing of someone who fought in the border wars with the Thorian pirates. The woman beside him will be the linguist. She wrote 3 papers on Zentari grammar structure, though she does not know we have read them." Jake felt a chill. How do they know about Amy's academic papers? Those were published in human universities. "It gets worse," Amy said. She pulled up another file. "This is a Vorthic communication from yesterday. They're discussing human military tactics in detail. Not just general strategy, but specific battle plans that were used in classified operations 5 years ago." Jake read the translation and felt his stomach tighten. The Vorthic were discussing human fleet movements and weapon capabilities with the kind of detail that should only be available to high-ranking human military officers. They knew about experimental shield technology that was still being tested in secret laboratories back on Earth. Captain Morrison called Commander Rick Taylor from the security station. Rick was a former military officer who had been assigned to protect the diplomatic mission. He was the kind of man who noticed everything and trusted no one until they proved themselves. "What is it, Rick?" Jake asked. "I've been watching the alien fleet formations," Rick said, pointing to the tactical display. "They're not arranged for a peaceful meeting. Look at this spacing pattern." Jake studied the screen. Dozens of alien ships were arranged in a complex formation around the meeting point. To most people, it would look like an impressive honor guard for the peace conference, but Rick was right. The ships were positioned in a way that would let them surround and capture any human ships that tried to leave. "It's a trap formation," Rick said quietly. "They could lock us down in minutes if they wanted to." "Maybe they're just being cautious," Jake said, though he did not believe it himself. "Captain," Amy interrupted, "there's more. I've been monitoring communications between the different alien races. They're coordinating their responses to questions they think we might ask. They have prepared answers for topics we haven't even thought about discussing." Jake walked back to his command chair and sat down heavily. 3 days ago, this had seemed like the most important moment in human history. The first time, humans would sit as equals with the great powers of the galaxy. Now it felt like walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. "Sir," said Lieutenant Sophie Martinez from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony flagship. They're requesting permission to come aboard for preliminary discussions." The Hegemony was the most powerful alliance of alien races in the galaxy. If they wanted to talk before the official conference started, it could mean they were planning something special or something dangerous. Let them come, Jake decided. But Rick, I want full security protocols. No weapons, no recording devices, and no more than 3 aliens on board at any time. An hour later, Jake stood in the main conference room of the New Frontier as 3 alien delegates entered. The leader was Prime Minister Zelenoff, a tall, thin creature with silver skin and large, dark eyes. Jake had studied hegemony politics for months, but meeting Zelenoff in person was still unsettling. The alien moved with a kind of fluid grace. That made Jake think of a predator pretending to be harmless. "Captain Morrison," Zelenoff said in perfect English, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us before the formal conference begins." "It's our pleasure," Jake replied, though he kept his voice neutral. "We're honored that the Hegemony wants to speak with us directly." Zelenoff's large eyes seemed to study Jake's face with uncomfortable intensity. "Captain, we must be honest with each other. This conference is not what your people think it is." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Humanity has reached a crossroads," Zelenoff continued. "For the past century, the Galactic Council has been watching your species develop. We have monitored your progress, studied your behavior, and evaluated your potential." Amy leaned forward in her chair. "You've been spying on us?" "Observing," Zelenoff corrected, "as we observe all developing species. But humanity is different. You have grown stronger and more capable much faster than we anticipated. Your expansion into space, your technological development, your military capabilities, all of it has exceeded our projections." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "So this conference is about deciding whether we're allowed to continue existing?" "In a sense, yes," Zelenoff replied without emotion. "The galaxy has a delicate balance of power, Captain Morrison. When a new species emerges that could disrupt that balance, decisions must be made." Rick shifted in his seat, and Jake could see his security chief's hand moving closer to his sidearm. "What kind of decisions?" Rick asked. Zelenoff turned to look at Rick with those unsettling dark eyes. "Some species are welcomed into the galactic community as junior partners. Others are contained within limited boundaries until they prove themselves worthy of trust. And some ... Some what?" Jake demanded. "Some are deemed too dangerous to be allowed to continue their development," Zelenoff finished. "The purpose of this conference is to determine which category humanity falls into." The room fell silent. Jake could hear the humming of the ships, engines, and the quiet beeping of electronic systems. But mostly, he could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. "How long have you been watching us?" Amy asked quietly. "Longer than you might think," Zelenoff replied. "We have been observing human space for many generations. The question is not why we know so much about you, Dr. Chun. The question is why. You know so little about the truth of your situation." Jake stood up from his chair. "I think this meeting is over." "Captain Morrison," Zelenoff said as he and his companions also stood, "I hope you understand that we are not your enemies. But neither are we your friends. We are judges, and humanity is on trial. What happens next depends on how well you can prove that your species deserves to survive and grow." After the aliens left, Jake sat alone in the conference room with Amy. And Rick. None of them spoke for several minutes. Finally, Amy broke the silence. "Jake, I don't think this is a peace conference at all. No, Jake agreed. It's a sentencing hearing. And I have the feeling that most of the jury has already made up their minds. Dr. Kevin Brooks wiped the sweat from his forehead and stared down into the excavation pit. After 3 weeks of digging on the dead planet Kepler 442b, his team had finally broken through into what looked like an underground chamber. The air was thick with dust and the smell of ancient metal, but Kevin could not contain his excitement. This discovery was going to change everything. Kepler-442b was supposed to be empty. The planet orbited a dying star in a system that had been dead for millions of years. No life, no civilization, no reason for anyone to ever visit. But deep space scanners had detected unusual metal structures beneath the surface, so the Science Council had sent Kevin's archaeological team to investigate. What they found should not have existed. Dr. Brooks called Lieutenant Sophie Martinez from the edge of the pit. Sophie was their military escort, a young woman who had volunteered for the mission because she wanted to see something other than the inside of a spaceship. She had not expected to witness the discovery of the century. "What is it, Sophie?" Kevin asked as he climbed up the metal ladder they had lowered into the chamber. "The structures we're seeing down there," Sophie said, pointing at her scanner. "Readings. They match human architectural patterns. Not alien designs, not some unknown civilization. Human." Kevin looked at the data on Sophie's screen and felt his world shift. The scanner was showing building layouts, room designs, and structural patterns that were unmistakably human in origin. But that was impossible. Humans had never been to this star system. This planet had been dead long before humans ever left. "Earth. There has to be some mistake," Kevin muttered. But even as he said it, he knew the scanners were not wrong. Professor Carl Hughes, the mission's language and history expert, emerged from the underground chamber carrying a metal box. Carl was an elderly man who had spent 40 years studying ancient civilizations across the galaxy. He looked shaken. "Kevin, you need to see what I found down there," Carl said, his voice trembling slightly. Kevin followed Carl to the equipment tent they had set up near the excavation site. Inside, Carl carefully opened the metal box to reveal several crystal data storage devices. They were clearly very old, but they were also clearly human technology. "I found these in what looks like a command center," Carl explained. "The room is full of equipment that looks like it came from a human military base. But the architecture, the materials, the wear patterns. Kevin, this stuff is thousands of years old." "That's impossible," Kevin said automatically. But he was starting to realize that impossible things were becoming normal on this mission. Carl activated one of the crystal devices on a portable reader. The screen flickered to life, showing text in perfect English. But not modern English. This was an older form of the language, formal and archaic, like something from historical documents. "Listen to this," Carl said, beginning to read from the display. "Final log entry. Colony Command Station Kepler 442b. Date 2847 Standard Galactic. Time: Colonel Janet Parker, commanding. We have received confirmation of the surrender terms. All outer colonies are to be abandoned. All evidence of human presence beyond the designated reservation zones is to be eliminated." Kevin felt cold, despite the warm air in the tent. "Reservation zones?" Carl scrolled through more of the data. "There's more. Much more. Kevin, according to these records, humans once had colonies throughout this entire region of space. Dozens of star systems, millions of people. This wasn't just one colony. This was part of a vast human empire." "But that's impossible," Kevin repeated. "Humans have only been traveling between stars for 200 years. "Not these humans," Carl said quietly. He pulled up another file. "Look at this star chart. It shows human territory spanning half the galaxy. And look at the date stamp. This chart is over 3,000 years old. Kevin stared at the display. The star chart showed a human civilization that dwarfed anything in modern history. Trade routes connecting hundreds of worlds. Military bases in strategic positions throughout space. Research stations studying phenomena that modern human science had barely discovered. There's something else, Carl continued. These records talk about a war. A long, terrible war against something called the Coalition of Silence. Never heard of them, Kevin said. Neither had I, until now. But according to these files, the coalition was made up of dozens of alien races working together. The same alien races that exist today. The Centauri, the Vorthik, the Hegemony, all of them. Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. They were fighting. Against humans? It looks that way. And from what I can tell, the war lasted for centuries. But here's the strangest part. Carl pulled up another document. The war didn't end with humanity being destroyed. It ended with some kind of treaty. Carl began reading from the screen again. Terms of the Treaty of Silent Stars. Article 1. Humanity agrees to withdraw from all territories beyond the inner sphere designated zones. Article 2. All human colonies, installations, and evidence of human presence beyond the inner sphere will be eliminated. Article 3. The human population of the inner sphere will undergo memory restructuring to remove knowledge of their previous empire and capabilities. Memory restructuring? Kevin asked. It gets worse, Carl said. Article 4. Humanity will be allowed to develop naturally within the inner sphere until such time as the ancient threat returns. At that time, the coalition will restore human memory and capabilities for the final conflict. Kevin sat down heavily on a equipment crate. You're telling me that modern humanity is just what's left after some kind of galactic mind wipe? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Carl replied. But there's more. I found personal logs from the last human emperor. Carl activated another crystal. This time, instead of text, a holographic image appeared. It showed a woman in elaborate military dress, standing in what looked like a command center. She was clearly human, but she carried herself with an authority that seemed almost alien to modern eyes. My name is Empress Catherine Reynolds, the hologram said. If you are seeing this recording, it means that humanity has begun to rediscover its true history. The Coalition believes that by reducing us to primitive colony worlds, they have solved the problem of human expansion. They are wrong. The hologram paused, as if the woman was choosing her words carefully. We are not surrendering because we are weak. We are accepting exile because we know something the Coalition does not. The ancient enemy that drove our species to become the greatest power in the galaxy is still out there, waiting beyond the edge of known space. When it returns, the Coalition will need us. They will need our strength, our adaptability, our refusal to surrender even when defeat seems certain. Kevin and Carl watched in fascination as the hologram continued. So we accept the memory wipe. We accept the exile to a handful of worlds. We allow the Coalition to think they have tamed us. But we leave behind these records, hidden in places. They will not think to look, because humans are survivors. We adapt. We overcome. And when the time comes, when the Coalition realizes they cannot win their final war without us, we will remember who we really are. The hologram flickered and faded. Kevin and Carl sat in silence for several minutes. Outside their tent, they could hear Sophie and the other team members continuing their excavation work, unaware that they had just discovered the greatest secret in human history. Finally, Kevin spoke. Carl, if this is all true, then everything we know about humanity's place in the galaxy is a lie. Not a lie, Carl corrected, a temporary truth. According to these records, we're not the junior species trying to find our place among older, wiser civilizations. We're the sleeping giant that agreed to take a nap until the galaxy needed us again. Kevin stood up and walked to the tent entrance. He looked out at the dead planets surrounding them, at the ruins of what had once been a thriving human colony. The question is, are we starting to wake up? I think so, Carl said. And I have a feeling that when we do fully wake up, the galaxy is going to be very surprised by what humanity is really capable of. Kevin activated his communication device to contact the ship in orbit. They needed to get this information back to Earth immediately. The truth about humanity's past was going to change everything about its future. Admiral Ben Carter was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alert sounded throughout the battleship Defiant. He set down his cup and hurried to the bridge, knowing that alerts this deep in space usually meant serious trouble. What he found waiting for him was worse than trouble. It was the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. Report, Ben ordered as he took his position in the command chair. Commander Janet Walsh, his second in command, pulled up the long-range sensor display. Sir, we're detecting massive fleet movements from 6 different alien civilizations. All of them are heading toward human space. Ben studied the tactical screen. Red dots representing alien ships were moving across the display like a slow-motion invasion. But something was wrong with the pattern. These aren't attack formations, he realized. They're moving to surround us, not invade us. That's what we thought too, sir, Janet replied. But look at this. She highlighted different sections of the display. The Zentari fleet is taking position along our northern border. The Vorthik are moving to the east. The hegemony forces are spreading out along our southern frontier. It's like they're building a wall around all of human space. A blockade, Ben said quietly. But why? Lieutenant Pete Williams looked up from the communication station. Pete was the ship's intelligence officer, a quiet young man who had a talent for finding patterns in seemingly random information. Admiral, I've been monitoring alien communications since the alert sounded. I think you need to hear this. Pete activated the ship's main speakers. The bridge filled with the sound of alien voices speaking in rapid, urgent tones. Most of it was incomprehensible, but the translation computer had been working to decode what it could. Zentari command to Fleet 7, the computer's voice said, translating a transmission. Accelerate deployment schedule. Archaeological discovery has moved up the timeline. Containment Protocol 7 is now active. Ben felt a chill. Containment Protocol? Pete switched to another transmission. Hegemony Fleet Command. This is Admiral Zeltoth. Human archaeological teams have discovered Archive Site 12. Repeat, the humans have found Archive Site 12. All units implement the Terran contingency immediately. What's Archive Site 12? Janet asked. I don't know, Ben replied. But whatever it is, it's got every alien race in the galaxy scared enough to mobilize their entire fleets. Colonel Tracy Morgan, Ben's strategic advisor, had been quietly studying the alien fleet positions. Tracy was a former intelligence officer who understood military strategy better than anyone else on the ship. She looked up from her analysis with a worried expression. Admiral, this isn't just a blockade, Tracy said. Look at the positioning more carefully. The alien fleets aren't arranged to keep us from leaving human space. They're arranged to keep something from getting out. Ben walked over to Tracy's workstation. What do you mean? The fleet positions are all wrong for a containment operation, Tracy explained. If they wanted to trap us, they'd put their strongest forces at our main shipping routes and colony entrances. Instead, they've positioned their fleets at points that don't make sense unless... Unless what? Ben asked. Unless they're not trying to keep us in, Tracy said slowly. They're trying to keep us from expanding outward. Every single alien fleet is positioned at a point where human space could potentially grow larger. Pete interrupted from his station. Admiral, I'm picking up another transmission. This one is on an emergency frequency that all the alien races are monitoring. The speakers crackled with a new voice, this one speaking in the formal tones used for official military communications. All coalition forces, this is Supreme Command. The humans are beginning to remember. Repeat, the humans are beginning to remember. Archaeological teams have recovered intact archives from the old empire. Psychological monitoring shows increased aggression and territorial expansion, desires among human populations. The sleeping giant protocol is no longer effective. Ben felt his blood turn cold. The old empire? What old empire? There's more, sir, Pete said. This next part is being transmitted to every alien fleet in the region. Coalition command to all units. Priority Alpha Directive. The humans must not be allowed to achieve full awakening before the return of the ancient enemy. If they recover their full capabilities too early, they may refuse to cooperate with the final protocol. All units maintain maximum containment. Use of force is authorized if humans attempt to break the boundaries. Janet looked at Ben with confusion. Sir, what are they talking about? What ancient enemy? What final protocol? Before Ben could answer, the ship's communication system activated with an incoming message from Earth Command. The face of General Kate Lewis appeared on the main screen. Kate was the head of Human Defense Forces, and she looked more worried than Ben had ever seen her. Ben, are you seeing what we're seeing out there? Kate asked, without bothering with formal greetings. If you mean alien fleets surrounding human space, then yes, Ben replied. Kate, what's going on? Our intelligence people are picking up transmissions that don't make any sense. They're starting to make sense to us, Kate said grimly. Ben, 3 hours ago, we received a priority transmission from the archaeological team on Kepler 442b. They found something that changes everything we thought we knew about human history. What kind of something? Ben asked. Kate paused, as if she was having trouble believing what she was about to say. Ben, it appears that humanity once controlled a massive empire that spanned half the galaxy. We're not talking about ancient history. We're talking about something that was erased from our collective memory through some kind of treaty with the alien coalitions. Ben stared at the screen. That's impossible. That's what I thought too, Kate replied. But the evidence is overwhelming. The archaeological team found intact records, star charts, military logs, even personal messages from humans who lived thousands of years ago. Ben, according to these records, modern humanity is what's left. After our ancestors agreed to give up their empire and have their memories wiped. Tracy looked up from her workstation. General Lewis, that would explain the alien fleet movements. If humanity once controlled territory this large, then the aliens aren't building a blockade. They're reinforcing a prison that's been in place for thousands of years. Exactly, Kate said. But here's the part that really scares them. The records indicate that humanity didn't surrender because they were defeated. They made a deal. They agreed to go into temporary exile until some kind of ancient threat returned. When that happens, humanity is supposed to get their memories and their empire back. Ben walked closer to the screen. Kate, are you telling me that we're some kind of secret weapon that's been kept in storage? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Kate replied. And apparently, we're starting to wake up ahead of schedule. Earth-based telescopes had detected unusual energy signatures from ancient human installations throughout the galaxy. Sites that we never knew existed are suddenly coming online. Pete called out from his station. Admiral, I'm detecting new transmissions. The alien fleets are moving to higher alert status. General Lewis, Ben said urgently, what are your orders? Kate's expression became grim. Ben, I want you to take the Defiant and investigate some of these ancient sites that are activating. But be careful. According to the alien transmissions we're monitoring, they're more afraid of us remembering our past than they are of whatever this ancient enemy is supposed to be. Why would they be afraid of us? Janet asked. Kate looked directly into the camera. Because according to the records the archaeological team found, the last time humanity was fully awake, we were the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. And if these ancient installations are reactivating, it means we're about to remember exactly how powerful we really are. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Defiant in stunned silence. Ben looked around at his crew, seeing the same mixture of confusion and excitement on every face. "Admiral," Tracy said quietly, "if all of this is true, then we're not just facing a diplomatic crisis with the alien races. We're facing the return of an empire that we don't even remember losing." Ben nodded slowly. "And apparently, the aliens have been waiting for thousands of years, dreading the day when we would start to remember who we really are." President Helen Scott stood in the Emergency Command Center, deep beneath the Capitol building, and watched as reports came in from every corner of human space. On dozens of screens around the room, military officers, scientists, and colonial governors were all saying the same impossible thing. Humanity was remembering, and the galaxy would never be the same. "Madam President," called Dr. Ryan Kelly from his workstation. Ryan was the head of the government's science division, and for the past week he had been working around the clock to understand what was happening to humanity. "I have the latest reports from the archaeological sites." Helen walked over to Ryan's station. She had been president for 6 years, and she thought she had seen every kind of crisis that could face humanity. Wars, natural disasters, economic collapse, even first contact with alien races. But nothing had prepared her for this. "What? Are the sites showing now?" Helen asked. Ryan pulled up a galaxy map on his screen. Dozens of points were blinking with bright blue light, scattered across an area of space much larger than current human territory. 47 ancient human installations have now come online. Most of them are in star systems we've never even explored, and they're all responding to signals that started on Earth 3 days ago. "What kind of signals?" Helen asked. "That's the strange part," Ryan replied. "The signals aren't coming from our government, our military, or any human organization we know about. They're coming from deep underground installations that we never knew existed. Installations that are older than recorded human history." "General." Kate Lewis looked up from her own workstation across the room. "Madam President, I have updates from Admiral Carter's mission. The Defiant has reached one of the ancient installations, and what they found there is going to change everything." Helen turned to face Kate. "What did they find?" "A fully operational human military base," Kate replied, "complete with weapons, ships, and technology that makes our current military look like children playing with toys. But here's the important part. The base systems recognized Admiral Carter and his crew as legitimate human military personnel. The computers automatically gave them access to historical databases and tactical information." "What kind of information?" Helen asked. Kate pulled up a tactical display. "The complete military history of the human empire. Battle plans, weapon specifications, and strategic analysis covering 3,000 years of galactic warfare. Madam President, according to these records, humanity didn't just control half the galaxy. We were the dominant military power in known space." Dr. Michelle Davis, the government's expert on alien psychology, had been monitoring communications from the alien fleets surrounding human space. She walked over to join the conversation. "Madam President, the alien reactions are confirming everything we're learning from the archaeological sites. They're not just afraid of us, they're terrified." "Show." Helen said. Michelle activated the main viewing screen. It displayed a recording of an intercepted alien communication with translation subtitles at the bottom. "Hegemony Supreme Command, this is Fleet Admiral Zelenoth," the alien voice said. The humans have accessed Archive Site 7. Repeat, they have accessed Archive Site 7. They now have complete tactical data on coalition fleet formations and defensive strategies. Recommend immediate implementation of the final withdrawal protocol. Final withdrawal? Helen asked. There's more, Michelle said. She switched to another recording. This is from the Zentari High Command, transmitted just 2 hours ago. All Zentari forces, this is Supreme Admiral Korthval. Human ship capabilities are exceeding all projections. Their vessels are upgrading themselves with technology we thought was permanently disabled. The humans are not just remembering their past. They are surpassing it. All units fall back to secondary defensive positions. Helen felt a mixture of excitement and dread. They're retreating? General Lewis nodded. Every alien fleet that was surrounding human space is now pulling back to positions twice as far away. It's like they're afraid to get too close to us. Commander Tony Parker's voice crackled over the communication system from his scout ship near the edge of human space. Command, this is Parker on Reconnaissance Mission Delta 7. You're not going to believe what I'm seeing out here. Report. Commander, Helen said. The alien fleets aren't just pulling back, Tony said. They're building defensive fortifications. Massive ones. It looks like they're preparing for a siege, but they're building the defenses facing away from human space. Away from us? Helen asked, confused. Yes, ma'am. Whatever they're building these defenses for, it's coming from the opposite direction. From beyond the edge of the galaxy. Dr. Kelly looked up from his workstation with a pale expression. Madam President, I think I know what they're preparing for. I've been analyzing the deepest archives from the ancient sites. There are references to something called the Void Swarm. What's the Void Swarm? Helen asked. According to the records, it's an ancient enemy that comes from the space between galaxies, Ryan explained. Something that consumes entire civilizations and leaves nothing behind but empty space. The records indicate that the Void Swarm was the reason humanity built such a powerful military empire in the first place. Michelle pulled up another file on her screen. That matches what I'm seeing in the alien communications. They keep referring to the ancient enemy and the final war, but they also keep saying that they can't win without humanity's help. Helen walked to the center of the room and looked around at all the displays showing the awakening of humanity's true power. So we weren't imprisoned by the alien races. We were preserved. Exactly, General Lewis said. The alien coalitions didn't defeat humanity. They made a deal with us. Humanity agreed to go into temporary hibernation, giving up our empire and our memories in exchange for being awakened when the real threat returned. And now it's returning, Helen said. Dr. Kelly nodded. The deep space monitoring stations that came online yesterday are detecting massive gravitational disturbances at the edge of the galaxy. Something big is coming, and it's heading straight for us. Helen activated the communication system to address the entire government command staff. I want every department head in the main briefing room in 1 hour. We need to prepare for the biggest decision in human history. As the staff began to gather, Helen remained in the command center, watching the displays that showed humanity's ancient installations coming to life across the galaxy. On one screen, she could see Admiral Carter's ship docking with a massive human battle station that had been hidden in an asteroid field for thousands of years. On another, she watched as human colonies reported that their defenses were automatically upgrading themselves with technology they had never seen before. Madam President, Michelle said quietly, there's one more thing you should know. I intercepted a message from the Hegemony Council to all coalition races. They're planning to make contact with us again, but this time it's not about judging whether we deserve to exist. What's it about? Helen asked. They want to surrender command of the coalition defense forces to humanity, Michelle replied. According to their message, the ancient treaties specify that when the Void Swarm returns, humanity automatically becomes the supreme military authority for the entire galaxy. Helen stared at the woman. They want us to lead their armies? Not. Just lead them, Michelle said. According to the treaty, all alien races are required to place their entire military forces under human command until the threat is eliminated. Helen walked to the main viewing screen and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, an ancient enemy was coming. An enemy so terrible that dozens of alien civilizations had agreed to give up their independence and place their trust in a species they had kept asleep for thousands of years. General Lewis, Helen said, contact Admiral Carter. Tell him to access every database and every weapon system in that ancient base. If we're about to become the military leaders of the galaxy, we need to remember how to fight. Yes, ma'am. Kate replied. Helen continued to stare at the stars. 3 days ago, humanity had been a small collection of colonies trying to find their place among older, more established civilizations. Now they were about to discover that they weren't just part of the galactic community. They were its protectors, its warriors, and possibly its only hope for survival. The memory was returning, and with it came the knowledge that humanity had never been the junior species in the galaxy. They had always been its guardians, waiting for the day when the galaxy would need them most. That day had finally come.